And welcome to another edition of The Meeting of the Minds. I'm the Great Bodini. It's been a little minute since we've last convened with you. I really don't know. There's been a lot of bad shit that's been going on. Sir Lancelot, he hopped on the horse and went down that dusty trail. He might be back. He might not be back. But if that day ever comes, he's always in our hearts. So he always has a place here. So, but I went out and I got myself another great mind for the Meeting of the Minds. Went and asked my guru, or my what did I call you for like the longest time? My mentor.
Yeah, your mentor.
You got me into Neil Young like when I didn't even think about getting into Neil Young, and like you got me to listen to Rush when I remember I was like, oh Rush, and you're like, fuck that, listen to 2112, and I went out and
yep, absolutely.
Yeah. So this is the Mighty Mickey. He's stepping in, and so he's gonna be the new guy here, and so Mickey, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Hey now, been down watching concerts for many years. I've seen a lot of different bands, and I like all kinds of music. Basically the blues. Saw a lot of bands come and go in their day, but I'm still into 311. It's my favorite band, and I've seen them 32 times.
Damn.
The next show will be 33.
Wow.
And I'll be 57 coming up. So I'm an old but young at heart.
Yeah.
So hello.
And I went to two of those, and one of which was like what you called the Super Bowl. When we went and seen 311
Day, 2008.
Dude, I remember when we were sitting in the. I think I told the story before, but I remember when we were sitting in that hotel room, and like I was getting dressed, and dude, this guy looked like he was like 10 years old, like on a Christmas day. He's like, dude, we're fucking ready, And I'm like, why? He's like, no, you don't understand. He's like, this is Super Bowl, baby. This is what it's all about.
It was a Super Bowl.
Yeah,
like 60 some songs. So.
It was like what, 5 hours, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm. 5.5.
Yeah,
5.5 hours. 3 sets.
3 sets, and each set was what, 20-something songs, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That was like 63 or 64 songs.
And then they came back for like an encore, but it was like 2 songs. And that was it, right? Something like that.
No, they did. They broke it up into 3.
Okay.
3 different. Yeah.
That still was a fucking rad ass show.
Good show.
Yeah.
Great show, actually.
You also seen Stevie Ray Vaughan? How many times?
Stevie Ray Vaughan 7 times. 3 with the fabulous T-Birds. I've seen a lot of bands back. Motorhead back in the day, early '80s.
Back before anybody really knew who Lemmy Kilmister was.
Lemmy was, yeah. Nobody really knew who Lemmy was at that time. Poison, been through all that. Just different. I mean, I've never really grown up. I'm sort of still young at heart.
Yeah.
Still. So, I'd say if I've been to, probably 600-700 shows, probably, realistically.
I was talking to my boss the other day, and I was listening to Jefferson's Airplane from the Fillmore in '69, and this guy is, he's a fairly older gentleman and stuff, and I said, hey, I was like, you were listening to Jefferson's Airplane? He's like, oh yeah, when I was a kid. He's like, but you know what, Jay, you kind of just grow out of that. I said, the fuck you do? I said, no, man. I said, no. I said, the day I grow out of that shit, I hope I like leave this world. I said, no.
No, you never outgrow it.
No, man. I mean, even if it's my choice. It's my drug. It's my whatever you want to call it.
Absolutely.
That's why we're here. That's why we created this thing to talk about what we're doing is music. And unfortunately, since the last time we had the show, we actually lost two heavyweights. One of which we are doing a tribute episode to today, which is Chris Cornell. I remember the day before it happened, I was listening to Sublime at work, and I texted Sir Lancelot some Sublime lyrics, and he was like, come back, he's like, Sublime? Question mark. I was like, yeah. And then we didn't say anything. And so I got this text message from him like 6, 7 o'clock in the morning. He said something like, yeah, Brad was something, but, I don't think something about Chris. And I'm like, sounds like Chris. And I'm like, oh, okay, whatever. I just went back to sleep. And I got it in the morning and I was like, Chris, who the fuck is Chris? Go on Facebook and it's the first thing you see. And I'm like, what the, it's kind of like a shock thing. And for me, it was pretty fucking sad. I actually started crying because this guy has been a place, a musical person in my life since at least 13 years old. I've been a fan of his ever since then. I remember when Audioslave first came out. That first day I was there. And I was so super stoked when I heard those guys were getting together. And I was like, that's really going to be a pretty sweet idea. And, the 3 records were so-so. But the first one was obviously the best. But did you ever listen to Audioslave?
Yes, I did.
Yeah?
Sure did.
Well, we'll have to save that for a little bit later because, we're going to wind up getting on that. But the other one, Greg Allman, who I'm sure I know who you were. You're a fan of Allman Brothers. And
Allman Brothers were a great live band. I wish I'd have seen them live. I never did see the Allman Brothers.
And they're actually from Daytona, didn't you say that?
Yeah. Daytona and then through Gainesville and then up to Macon, Georgia.
Yeah. They were kind of like the pioneers of Southern rock.
Absolutely.
And then, of course, it'd probably go Allmans and then like Leonard
Dickie
Skinner.
Betts was probably the best slide guitarist. I hold him. I'd say he's probably in the top 10.
Yeah.
In guitarists.
Well, didn't the drummer die of a suicide a couple years ago? Like a year or two ago? Didn't Derek?
Actually, last year.
Was it last year?
Well, it's been about 6 months. He shot himself in front of his wife. Yep.
Well, at first you didn't hear all that. You just kind of heard, oh, this guy just off himself, and then you heard, oh, suicide, and then you hear him like, oh, he did it in front of his wife. You're like, what the fuck? First it went from like something like, okay, he's dead, to like, wow, there was something more sinister. Like, we're wrestling fans, like Chris Benoit. When Chris Benoit died, at first you didn't hear all the details. You're sitting there like, wow, that's fucked up. Him and his wife and kid are all dead. Somebody killed him, came in and shot him, and then you hear a day later what really happened, and you're like, fuck. Mm-hmm. You're like, you don't know people,
Absolutely.
You don't know anybody, and especially like when it comes, even like with Chris Cornell. That was the one thing that always was getting me. I really haven't listened to any of his music since then. I did listen to a little bit, preparing for the show, but I really can't, because every time I listen to it, I start getting those feelings like, you were just fucking here. Why the fuck did you do it? Did you do it? Like, did you think you were doing it? What the fuck was going through your head? And just like Jerry Cottrell said, we'll never fucking know. Just like with Lane. Lane was a heroin addict, and we know what he died from, but he was obviously wrestling with some kind of demon.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, I don't know. What's your take on it? I'm sure, like in the death metal world, there's definitely some suicides.
Not so much. Like, I haven't really. Not so much in the death metal world, but I know definitely in the black metal world, especially with the band Mayhem. Mm-hmm. For example, you have Dead, or his real name, Per Yngve Olen. I don't speak Norwegian, so I can't really pronounce it. But, the craziest thing is that, he committed suicide as well. Uh-huh. And the thing is that apparently he was going through, some really, rough shit. Or just the fact that he was just getting too deep into his music, because the type of music they were playing, definitely very crazy. And here's the really fucked up part too. Yeah. The people, when the bandmates discovered that he was actually his dead body with his brains blown out, instead of just calling the police to report, hey, their friend just committed suicide, they take a picture of it. And they turned it into a cover album for an EP. Right. Yeah. And apparently there were rumors that the the shattered bones of, you know, when after he shot himself, they actually took some of those bones and they made it all into necklaces.
I heard his brains.
Or
I heard his brains too.
Like the brain matters too. Yeah,
like that was what really, like, with the, because I heard that on VH1. And I'm thinking, why the fuck is Mayhem on VH1? Why are they talking about this? But then you hear what they're talking about, like these assholes. You know, instead of, like you said, calling about the friend and, we're going to make necklaces out of brain matter and skull and what the fuck?
Yeah, the thing is that, you know, as great as a band Mayhem is, it definitely does have a very dark, you know, history behind that band.
Well,
not just with, you know, the suicide of Dead, but also the, you know, murder of Euronymous because of, what's his name? The guy from... Can't think of his name. Varg, because of Varg, yeah.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I don't know the whole story, but, you know, I know some of it. And didn't he burn down churches and shit?
They burned down churches a lot, yes.
And he, total satanic fucker, man.
Yeah.
Very.
I mean, over there in Norway, like that's crazy shit, man.
Oh, yeah.
Like that whole black metal scene over there is like insane.
It's commonplace.
It's just like
not just for the music, but also church burnings.
Well, like, and even Alice Cooper once said, like, he got off the you know, the plane or whatever, and, you know, this kid comes up to him and he's like in total man cave. He's like, "Hello, Mr. Cooper, can I get your autograph?" You know, it's like total dork came out, and he's like, "Yeah, man." You know, and if anybody knows anything, you know, we're talking about Cooper here. But that actually is a really good idea here, seeing that you were talking about death metal and stuff. On your segment.
Well, I mean, in this particular segment, just like how I was referring last time when we were talking about Morbid Angel, I actually got to you know, listen to this particular band many a times, and I got to see this band several times as well.
Right.
This band is also coming from Tampa, Florida. Been around since the 1980s. Just like many of the original death metal bands came up, not just from Florida, but also in California as well. Actually, they came around the same time that Possessed did, too.
Oh, really?
So this band I'm referring to is Obituary. Obituary, definitely great band. I really love the style of death metal they play. It's not just always straight, you know, death metal, just fast picking and all that stuff, but they always like have this groove on them. Like they have like this element of groove metal mixed into it, but they don't really identify as that, but they do have such a nice groove to it.
Gotcha.
When they first originally started out, they weren't really known as Obituary. They were actually known as Executioner. But but instead of having the letter E, the first letter E for Executioner, they took it out, so it just began with an X because they don't want to be confused with the thrash metal band Executioner from Boston of the same name.
Gotcha.
So, but definitely great band to see live many a times. I remember the first time I actually got to see them live was back in 2013 when they actually did a live stream of their show.
Oh, really?
And they played their first three albums the first three albums from Slowly We Rot, Cause of Death, and The End Complete. They played those three albums, not necessarily entirely, but they did play a large portion of their set were from the first three albums.
You know, that's a new thing nowadays. It seems like, you know, when Bonnaroo's around or even Coachella's around, they have live streams from that show. So it's like, well, hell, you don't have to go there. You can just turn on your computer and watch a show. You know.
Actually, 311 has a couch tour where you can watch the shows. They did the Cannabis Cup last night, or the night before last, and it's broadcast live.
Have you watched it yet?
Watched parts of it, yeah.
Yeah, I've seen the Claypool Lennon Delirium when they were. I think they was at Bonnaroo last year, maybe. And it was actually a really good set. They had played down in what's that place, man? It's over by the Beefy King, the Plaza.
Yeah,
they played
Plaza
there.
Live.
Yeah, they played there, and I was kind of bummed I didn't see them. And then I see them live, you know, from Bonnaroo, and I was even more bummed because I texted Sir Lancelot, and I told him, I was like, I think we fucked up by not going to that show.
Whoops.
And he totally agreed, but, you know. But that's cool, man. I mean, I remember Cure. The Cure did that. They did a. It was called the Trilogy, where I think it was one night they played, one of their albums, and next night another album, and then Perfect Circle did that.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And then the one time I got to see, what's the band I can't think of at the moment?
Well, we saw Anthrax play Among the Living.
Yeah, and not just Anthrax, but
we saw Mastodon play Crack the Sky.
Yeah, we saw that. Yeah, a lot of bands nowadays and always play their certain albums in its a complete entirety too.
Right.
That's a really cool concept to do. But also, like you were saying earlier, like with this live stream with bands, live streaming their shows, I'm seeing that a lot, especially on Facebook as well. Because with Reese I think it was like maybe this year or last year when Facebook started incorporating the live, where you just take a video of yourself, like if you're going to like a park or if you're hanging out with family or friends, you just take a live video and just show it on Facebook, like hey, I'm having a good time, that stuff.
Yeah,
and even bands are doing that too, which is pretty cool too. So that way, if you can't make that particular show, whether it because you don't happen to live in that area that they're playing at, or if by any chance you can't make it to a show that they're playing near you right now. Mm-hmm. Like I've seen that. I think Morbid Angel actually did that not too long ago too, or maybe Revocation, because I know they are touring currently right now together.
Right.
And I just saw Morbid Angel a couple weeks back when they played in Orlando at the Beecham.
Yeah,
really good show, by the way. I think I'm gonna review that show at another time.
Yeah, that's actually a really good. That's a nice venue to see a show at.
Very nice venue. Very nice venue.
I saw Sleep there. We saw Sword there.
I was there with you when we saw both those shows.
Yeah, so it was Crazy Taylor.
Yeah.
But she actually has a band. He's in a band now called Cardinal.
Cardinal, yeah. I've yet to listen to their music, but from what he tells me...
sounds pretty good.
From what he tells me, and what Sir Lancelot has said, he describes it as Iomi praising.
Yeah.
But I haven't listened to it yet, but I'll check them out. And whenever they do come out with a EP, because he is talking about trying to save up some money to do an EP, I'll give it a listen.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he has. I think he posted a song or two that they did in the studio or something like that. Maybe.
Yeah.
I haven't listened to it yet, but I did watch one of his shows. Like I think this was like the first show that he did, and it was pretty good. I was really surprised, and I was like, oh, well, keep it on rocking, dude. Keep it high.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, this kid like was freaking out. I wouldn't say freaking out, but he was definitely like, I stood right where Pike stood.
Exactly.
I was like, nice.
A lot of Matt Pike and Iomi praising.
Yeah, man.
But back to the topic at hand. But definitely, Obituary is a great band. Another cool thing aside from their first three albums, when I saw them tour with their first three albums for the first time when I first saw them live when they did the live stream. Another cool tidbit is that after their album Back from the Dead, sometime around that time, they just didn't really feel like wanting to tour anymore. They just kind of got sick of it, so they broke up in 97. Mm-hmm. So they split for a little while. So at that time, Donald Tardy, the drummer of Obituary, he actually left went and did touring with Andrew WK for a little while after the first disbandment of Obituary. Also, another tidbit fact that for those who have yet to listen to Obituary, John Tardy, his brother, is also the vocalist of Obituary as well. So you have two brothers that are playing in the same band, which is pretty cool. And another cool thing is that whenever I see them live, they seem like they're some of the most humble people out there that you may ever meet. And Donald Tardy actually has a particular show that they hold at least maybe on a yearly basis over at the Brass Mug in Tampa, called the Metal Meowlicia, which is basically a benefit show for cats, for cats that are basically homeless, then trying to look for homes and things like that. I actually went to one a few years back, and it was around the time where Terrorizer and Exhumed played in this show. Because mainly the majority of the bands that play, because they have a pretty big, set of the bands that play for this particular festival that they have, which are mainly local bands. Sometimes they may bring like a couple well-known bands, like in the case that I've, went through, they had Terrorizer and Exhumed. And it's all for a good cause, the show is to help benefit for, homeless cats and things like that. And because, Donald Tardy, if you follow his Facebook, you'll see that he actually owns some cats himself. And, he definitely loves cats and stuff like that. And I find that awesome because I'm also a cat person too.
Yeah.
So I like benefit shows like that, where they... help, animals and things like that, especially, you find a lot of homeless cats, homeless dogs out there, and it's really sad to see,
Yeah, it is really
sometimes, and you just want to, go up there, and just help them out. I saw a video the other day of this guy who's going on a trip somewhere. I think he was going like Midwest, and on his way on the road, he actually stopped and saw that there was like a bunch of puppies, laying down on the road. Mm-hmm. And they looked like they were about to die. So he actually went and grabbed those little puppies, took them with him to the vet, just to have them checked out and see if they're okay. And then he just adopted them later on afterwards.
Gotcha. Wow.
Pretty cool stuff.
Nice.
Yeah, man.
Pretty cool stuff. And sometime later on after 1997, when they first split up, they actually came back in 2003, and they reunited at that time. They've seen different members of the band. But some of the original members obviously were basically John Tardy, Donald Tardy, the brothers. Then you also had Trevor Perez, which is the rhythm guitarist. Another cool tidbit fact is that sometimes when Obituary plays, Trevor Perez actually has like his own truck where he actually sells food. Like he sells like Southern food, things like that. And I have yet to try it, but I'll have to check it out one of these days whenever I see Obituary again, whenever they play like the smaller venues. Because sometimes they may play venues like not the Beecham, but the
Haven?
Not the Haven. Well, yeah, they've played the Haven before. But if they
Haven's
play,
really small, dude. We saw Soulfly there.
Yeah, they have played the Haven too, and
it was pretty small.
Yeah, very small.
I remember people were doing, circle pits. I'm like, there's no room in here to do.
No, but they make it work.
Yeah.
They make it work.
Well, then you get people fucking doing like stage diving. It's like, where are you gonna?
No, I don't agree with the stage diving. That's just stupid. If you're gonna go to like the Beecham. That would be the place where if you want to stage dive. Actually, no, wait, you can't do it with the Beecham yet because they have heavy security there. Yeah, no.
I remember,
but like the Orpheum, you can.
I was at what was that? Earth Day birthday one year back in, I think it was like 2002, and there was probably about maybe 100 of us like up at the front of the stage, and we were in a cluster, so it didn't look like there was a lot of people, and it was in between bands, and this fucking crazy guy is like, hey man, fucking like hoist me up. I want to crowd surf. I'm like, crowd surf to what? There's no fucking music, idiot. I'm like, get the fuck out of here. And then like the next thing, like 10 minutes later, you see this guy like crowd surfing. It's like, there's no fucking music, guy. Fucking idiot.
Yeah, that's stupid. And then also a very well known bass player is in Obituary, Terry Butler. He also played in Massacre, which unfortunately no longer is around because of the drama that they had back in 2015 actually, yeah, because of the drama they had because of the Death to All tour when they're doing the benefit show for Death and Chuck Schuldiner at the time.
Right. I think you mentioned.
I was there at that show and I got to see Massacre live play, and then afterwards that's when I got the news on the phone, because sometimes when I pull up my Facebook just to see if anybody was going to the show, somebody posted out there saying that Massacre quit that same night. It's like, wait, what?
Right.
That's incredible.
My cousin was at I think it was like 2000. I think like Halloween of 2000, He was at the Misfits show at the House of Blues when Michael Graves quit. And it's still one of this day. It's like one of his, I wouldn't say proudest moments, but he's like, "Hey, I was there." I was like, "Yeah, I know."
Yeah,
it's fucking awesome.
Yeah, definitely awesome, man. But I like some of the albums that they came out after they reunited was actually 2 years later after they came back. They came out with Frozen in Time, and that's actually one of my most favorite album from Obituary. Definitely start seeing, hear more of the groovy side as they're playing.
Right.
And they came out with other albums later on, such as Executioner's Return, Darkest Days, and then 3 years ago they came out with Inked in Blood, which is really good. I actually got to see them back in 2015 when they played at the West End Trading Company over in Sanford. And they were touring Inked in Blood at the time, which honestly was badass.
Right.
Definitely badass. And surprisingly, for a small venue, they still did a lot of circle pits.
Wow.
And I got to go in there for a little bit, but I couldn't stay because I couldn't do it for so long because people kept spilling their beers. I'm like, nope, not doing it anymore. And then they actually just came out with a new album this year, which is a self-titled album. I have yet to listen to it. I haven't gotten around to it yet because I hear a lot of people saying that it's not as good as their earlier works. But I'll have to really have to check them out and see what could be going on with that album. But I still love Obituary. I think they're like we said in the last episode, we were talking about like the big four of death metal. I can definitely see that Obituary being like the Anthrax of death metal,
right,
per se.
Yeah.
So, but all in all, definitely a great band. If you haven't already, which I would be surprised if you haven't already, check them out. Definitely listen to. Definitely listen to Obituary. Start with the earlier works, and go take it from there.
Yeah, that's what it's about, man.
That's all it's about, man.
Yeah. So, what's actually the next band you're going to talk about next time?
Well, actually, next band I'm actually
going to leaving Florida. Are we going to go somewhere else in the world?
Well, not right now, but next time I actually want to review the Morbid Angel show that I got to see last time. So
okay, right.
I want to review that show before we get to any other new bands at the time.
All right.
After that, we'll see where it goes.
Right on. So check that out next episode. Back to the Bodini Theater. I didn't do one last episode because I did the Who episode. And so I had to more or less focus on that than in the Bodini Theater. And now, Mickey, if you don't know what the Bodini Theater is, I review movies such as, concert films, documentaries, movies that, had great soundtracks or was fueled by rock music, right, so to speak, whatever. And that's one of the movies I'm going to, talk about today. It was announced last week. Tom Cruise announced that there's going to be a Top Gun 2. I don't know how to take that because it's been 31 years, and one of the reasons why I wanted to bring this up was because I had a conversation with this kid I work with. I say kid because he's like 19, and we were talking about it, and he told me, he was like, Jay, I just don't get it sometimes. Like I've seen that movie before, but it's like planes. I like that kind of stuff, but like I didn't really get with the music and stuff. It's kind of cornball, and I said, well. You think it's cornball, I said, but you weren't there in 1986, man.
Time, yeah.
I mean, MTV was everywhere, man. I mean, every show, Miami Vice, for fuck's sake, dude. I mean, when you watch Miami Vice, you could sit there and like hear the top 20 at the time, or even like old school stuff,
They still played music all the time.
But the movie came out in '86, and it was a very successful movie. It was like I think $150 million it made, and for 1986, that was a lot of damn money. You had Mr. 80s soundtrack at the time, Kenny Loggins on it. Kenny did Caddyshack, he did Footloose, he did Top Gun, he did fucking Over the Top. He did Caddyshack 2. I mean, the list goes on and on and on where that guy came from. You know him from Loggins and Messina. And I mean, we talked about Loggins and Messina before, and I said, I really never got into that, and you're like, sorry.
Yeah. That's a long time ago.
Because I even told you, I was like, I just know the Loggins as like the Footloose guy and the Top Gun guy, and you're like, oh, dude, no. You're like, there's a lot more to him than just that. But I mean, for the 1980s, it was kind of like Bruce Springsteen. When he came out with Born in the USA, a lot of his fans were like, what the fuck is Bruce doing? Why? But that was the one and only time when Springsteen actually did a commercial record where he went out and said, hey, this is going to be commercial as fuck. I'm going to just do everything I can. That album had 7 hit singles off of it.
Yeah, plus it was a soundtrack for Chevy trucks.
Yeah,
for a long time too, so.
and old Reagan used it for one of his things, and I think Springsteen was like, no,
he said,
negative,
nay.
Nay to that, dude,
Yeah.
nay. But I mean, Top Gun. For 1986, shooting stuff like with airplanes and stuff like that. I mean, that was groundbreaking stuff. I mean, even back in the 60s when they would do those old World War II movies, that would be more or less like just like in a simulator kind of thing. I don't really think they actually went out and shot, flights and stuff like as far as like this Top Gun, where they actually had cameras mounted on the airplane and you went out and they shot this shit and. I don't know, man. It was groundbreaking work. It was also kind of like the way Die Hard was. It was kind of like the Godfather stuff, because after that, it's when you had the Iron Eagles coming out. You had that movie with Nicolas Cage, that Firebirds that came out. That was more or less just like ripping Top Gun off every time, But I just still wonder, like, why wasn't it sooner? And I did some research on it, and they said like for years they had tried to, but I think either it was like Cruise didn't agree to it, or it wasn't all that, But I mean, you look at what Cruise went on to do after that movie. I mean, he's not one of the biggest stars for nothing.
Exactly.
I mean, even though I don't agree with Scientology or what he believes in, but I do like him as an actor, and I mean his filmography, or whatever you want to call it, speaks for itself. It's almost the lines of like a Jack Nicholson, where I mean, Jack just speaks. Jack's wide ranged, and that's what Tom is. But I'd like to see what what happens with Top Gun 2. I think a lot of people are like, well, there was no CGI back in those days. It was just like we had to go out and shoot it all, like real time and stuff like that. And I could see him still doing that, because he's like, as far as like I think Mission Impossible movies, a lot of times he does a lot of the stunts. And I mean, when that airplane takes off on those Mission Impossible movies and he's hanging on the side of the door, it's like, dude, is that for real, or is that
right?
Is that CGI? I mean, I can't tell. So I mean, I really think that like, they're going to still shoot real stuff as far as like planes and stuff like that. But I mean, there's they'll CGI shit, I'm sure.
Or like in The Last Samurai.
With the one with him?
With him, yeah. With Last Samurai, when they...
I've never seen that movie.
You've never seen that movie? You should. It's a really great movie.
Yeah, I've never seen it yet.
Yeah.
It was like last year, or year before last, was like the first time I ever sat down and watched Born on the 4th of July. And I was blown away, man. I was like, why the fuck? I mean, I he got a Golden Globe for that, but he was denied the Oscar. And I was like, why? Why was he denied the Oscar for that movie? If in his whole career, if he ever was that one role that he should have got an Oscar for, that was the fucking movie. And I remember I went to work and I was talking to somebody about it, and then my boss peeked his head. I was like, "Oh, you've never seen that movie? Where the fuck have you been?" I was like, "Sorry, I wasn't really interested when I was growing up." But that guy was, the movie the guy's about is a true guy, and he actually gave. I guess he gave his Medal of Honor to Tom as a gift or something like that when he won the if he didn't win the Oscar or something like that. Somehow the guy would have given Tom his Medal of Honor, and that's just weird. I don't, I mean, it's probably weird for Tom when he's just sitting there and he's like, well, okay, this is yours, though.
Yeah.
I don't get it, but okay, I'll take it. Because if you don't take it, then it's like a slap in his face. Like, here you go. But, yeah, I don't know if it's going to be like a success, like a big blockbuster, like the way the first one was in 1986. I mean, The fucking musical landscape has changed. The movie landscape has changed. Everything has fucking changed. You know, there are no more F-14 Tomcats. Those are all retired, so that means they're going to have to come out with different jets. I did see that Val Kilmer, I don't know if he has talked to Tom about it, but he said before that, like, I want to come back as Iceman. You know, I want to do kind of like Iceman thing. And you know, I was talking to my dad, and he was like, "What the fuck is he going to do?" I said, "They're going to be instructors." You know, it's probably not going to be about Maverick. It's probably about somebody else. Like, he has to mentor somebody. He might be like Goose and die, you know, or Iceman be like Goose and like Maverick Holden's like, "Iceman, no."
You know, fun fact, you know the band Psycho Stick actually covered Danger Zone.
Oh, speaking of the theme, did you know that Steve Stevenson from Billy Idol was the one who did the solo on the original theme?
Oh, really?
Yeah, that was all Steve Stevenson from. He actually did all the instrumental work for that movie.
Yeah,
he was the session player.
Nice.
So that's kind of like what happened after he left Billy, or it might even be like when he was Billy or after he left Billy, but.
He left Billy with Michael Jackson too.
Did he?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yes, he did.
Nice. Well, he was great, dude.
Absolutely.
Very fucking rated as a guitar player.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't see like they talked to Steve before. It's like, oh, you know, he's like, I'm thinking about retiring, and it's like, well, then I'm never going to see Billy. I'm only out. It's like a package deal. It's like going to see an Aerosmith. Which did you hear that? Joe Perry said like, I don't think the Axe tour, the final tour is going on. Now they're going to just celebrate the 50th anniversary tour. They're not even talking about quitting. He's talking about, like it's like what? So it literally was like retirement. And then Joe's like, I don't know if we're going to quit yet. I'm definitely going to do this 50th anniversary tour. And it's like, what the fuck? You cannot rely on Aerosmith to ever say, "Hey, we quit." No, you don't quit.
No.
Aerosmith's like Rolling Stones, dudes. They'll quit when one of them guys has to be carried off stage.
I did see the Joe Perry project in between.
Did you?
The Aerosmith thing, but that.
When did you see? What year was that?
Probably 83 or 4.
83, 84.
Something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was short lived, but that was
It was some of the solo work actually showed up on that Pandora box set, which was the early Aerosmith box set stuff, like from '73 or whatever to like the 1983, I think it was. Yeah. And some of his solo work was on there, man. And dude, like he plays the killer slide.
Absolutely.
Play the damn good like blues player slide.
Mm-hmm.
We saw that behind the music thing, and like he was always. I didn't know that the band was that big of a heroin band. I really didn't think so. And then I'm watching this thing, and like old Joe's like talking about being dope sick, and you know, fucking Steven's getting pissed off at Joe because he's not sharing the dope, and you know he goes up to his bedroom and stays up there for like 7 days straight. And I was like, well, how does he piss in shits? Well, I guess he has a bucket.
Yeah.
I mean, that's some kind of mentality that you just don't.
I saw those years back in the middle 70s with Aerosmith, and yeah, that wasn't a good time for him to see him live anyway.
Yeah. You saw him a couple times, didn't you? You could see.
Saw Aerosmith several times.
And you and your buddies, you took the big bamboo paper from the
yeah, actually we rolled.
Cheech and Chong.
Yeah, when Train Kept a Rolling came on, we smoked that. That was I don't know what year that would have been, but that was back in a very dark period of my life.
Good times. All right.
A good time.
Yeah. So Top Gun. I mean, it was a milestone. It's a great movie. I mean, the soundtrack speaks for itself. It was just as much sold as the movie was sold. You know, sold the tickets. You had to have the soundtrack. That's the way it was back in those days. I mean, like Footloose comes out, you have to have the Footloose soundtrack. You know, it's just the way it was back in those days. I mean, nowadays we don't have that anymore, thanks to digital technology and shit. You know, I mean, you start seeing places like Circuit City, you know, the malls. I mean, they're talking about the malls being fucking closed by 2019. All of them. I mean, that's fucking crazy to think about that, man.
It's funny to see now where you have MP3s coming out that look like cassette tapes. Mm-hmm. Everything's going back to where it originally came from. It all does a complete circle.
Vinyls are coming back.
Yeah,
vinyl's been big.
I mean, for like people like Jack White is what's keeping that alive. I mean, they're the one. He has his Vault package for a reason. Like, he comes out with stuff for you to buy. You know, like he has the new Dead Weather is coming out with a live album, and you have to subscribe to his Third Man Records in order to get this, and you can only get it through there. And if you try to get it, say through like eBay or something, you're gonna pay out the ass. I mean, I paid $189 for his package from Bonnaroo.
Holy crap!
But to me, it was worth it. I mean, to me, it was worth it because the way I look at it now is I have something that not many people have. I've never played the record. I've only watched the DVD. Because I don't have a record player. It's not for lack of trying. I want to get a record player so I can play it. But
that'd be badass to have, though.
Hell yeah! But there's tons of stuff that came in this thing, like postcards and, you know, like knickknacks and shit. And it's kind of like
that was the joy of getting an album where you could read through everything.
Remember Sgt. Pepper's with the mustaches and shit that they would have?
Absolutely.
You know, it's stuff like that. And yeah, I mean, it's for the diehard fan. It's for the fan who, you know. I mean, I'm a diehard fan, but I'm not that diehard. I don't have $60 to pay for a subscription. I think you have to pay like so much a month for it or something like that. I don't think it's like straight 60. And then you have to buy the fucking album, which is another 20 or $30.
Yeah. And
then once it goes off, it goes in the vault. And I haven't seen him like re-release any of his shit. I mean, he has, you know, this is like almost the 30th package, I think, since he's been starting it, and it's a lot of rare stuff, a lot of White Stripes, Raconteurs. He's even started releasing other stuff like Death from Above 1979 played there, the Melvins played there, all of them which who have released stuff. You know, it's like Melvins from the Third Man Records, or that stuff you can buy in the stores. You know, but for some reason you can buy only that in stores, but you can't buy his other stuff in the stores.
Right,
you have to only do that through his fucking website, which, you know, that's the mystique behind it. You know, it's like how Baba Booey, you know, he talks about the record coming back, which it kind of is coming back, but I just don't see it. You know, I really don't. I mean, I see it for like people like our age, you know, or somebody like Sir Lancelot, who is a a vinyl connoisseur, so to speak. You know, and he buys stuff a lot. You know?
I would love to start collecting vinyls if I have the space to do it.
Yeah.
If I have the space to do it, I would, because even in the death metal, world, there is vinyl versions of the albums that come out. Like, especially with Possessed Beyond the Gates, what I like seeing the most. Actually, one time I went to Mojo's bookstore over in Tampa.
Uh-huh.
I actually got to see a copy of Possessed Beyond the Gates album on vinyl.
Was that their first album?
Second.
Oh, okay.
Their first album was Seven Churches.
Okay.
But with their second album, when I saw the cover, of it, apparently from what I heard, when you open it up, when you open the actual cover and things like that, it kind of looks like it opens up kind of like if it was like an upside down cross, which is befitting for the band. Well, especially
what was it? Black Sabbath did that, like on their first album, when they got the liner notes and they seen this inverted cross, they got really fucking pissed off about that, because some were like, oh, what, and they really were. A lot of people were fucking clueless. Like Anton LaVey, the guy from the Satanic Church.
Yeah.
When Sabbath came to California for the first time, he invited them to the church to come to one of the services or whatever.
Yeah.
Of course, they did not. No, whatever. He wound up, running into him later and, hey, how come you didn't come to the thing? And they told him flat out, like, we talk about people like you for people to stay clear of you. We're not telling people to go and worship you. We're telling people to not worship you.
Yeah.
We're telling people to say, like, you're evil, don't fucking go do it. But, and a lot of people, of course, they don't interpret that shit. They just, hear evil shit and that's it.
Technically speaking, the upside down cross isn't really the satanic cross.
No, I know. They used to. That's the way that sometimes, like back in the old days,
St. Matthew's, I think, something like that.
They would crucify the Christians on an upside down cross.
Right, and I think it was like originated from St. Matthew's because he specifically requested to not be crucified like Jesus was, so they had him upside down.
Yeah.
So,
and something I didn't know until this guy told me that the 3 nails in Jesus were 9-inch nails. I did not
wow.
Yeah, I did not know that.
It's irony.
Yeah. And when
Irony.
he told me that, and I'm like, huh? I'm like, no. And then I started thinking, I was like, N-I-N, and then the 3 places on the body that were put. I was like, okay, now it's starting.
Irony, yeah. There you go.
It's starting to come out
that
of
makes
shit,
sense. That makes sense there.
It's like interesting. I don't know if he's ever, come out and said. I mean, did he say that?
I don't know if he's ever confirmed that or not.
But that was definitely like one of those. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
But still, I mean, that's definitely one of those things. Just
you don't really look for that when you listen to the band. You just go in there and listen to the music.
Yeah.
You don't really look.
There's a lot of mystique about music, and that's what's amazing about it.
Absolutely, especially with how people tend to play certain songs backwards and they hear something completely different.
Yeah,
especially with
Zeppelin?
Stairway to Heaven.
Yeah, Zeppelin.
Stairway to Heaven.
Zeppelin or
and then
Judas Priest.
Do It. And
that's. I mean, you can hear whatever you want to hear in a song, but that doesn't mean you're going to take the lyrics literally. I mean,
hell, even the Pokemon theme song from the '90s. If you certain parts, if you listen to it backwards, it's about Satan worshiping. That's at least if you listen. If there's talk about it too. Yeah.
Do you remember the time when Ozzy was getting interviewed and somebody had said like the Suicide Solution song had some message in there called it says something like "Get the gun, shoot."
I heard about that.
And the interviewer sitting there talking to Ozzy, and of course Ozzy just is like, "Get the gun." He's like, "Get like fucking what gun?" He's like, "I never seen anybody need to get no fucking gun." He's like, "That song's about drinking yourself to death, you fucking idiot." Yeah. That shows how clueless people are.
Yeah. Sometimes when you get a version of a song, it's hard to or disappointing when you find out what the meaning of it, the true meaning of it is. You never know. Sometimes it takes you think you know. Well, I guess that's what songs are for. Everybody interprets it different.
Well, look at Police and Every Breath You Take. Everybody thought for years, oh, that's a love song. It's all about a stalker, dude.
Definitely.
I mean, like, I listen to that now, and I'm like, that sounds like somebody, like a serial killer would call somebody and, like, play that song, and then he'd be, like, standing right there or something,
Mm-hmm. Hell, even Britney Spears, there's certain songs that she has, if you listen to it backwards, also has some hidden messages, quote-unquote.
Well, like, that whole... like Beyonce, they say Beyonce is a part of the satanical. They say Lady Gaga, a lot of the stuff that she wears is very satanic and stuff like that.
If they think that, they should go to a black metal concert. They'll see truly,
I mean, people don't know shit, dude. I mean, but then like heavy metal's always gotten that bad rap. Like like we were talking about Judas Priest and stuff like that. I mean, kids get fucking shot. Oh, they were just listening to a Judas Priest album. Oh, fucking, let's go arrest those guys.
Yeah,
that's
it's not like Judas Priest was playing a concert right there and going and like whispering to this guy's ear. I mean, they probably had like a little cassette tape out there, and I don't really know what the whole story was, but it was something along those lines, and somebody shot and killed themselves, and one died and one didn't.
Yeah.
But like the one that didn't, I think he got fucked up.
I think he did.
I think he really got messed up. So anyway, well, that's we're gonna go ahead and take our first break. We're gonna head it on over to Yella's Corner. Mickey, if you haven't checked out Yella, man, I think you'd really like Yella. He's kind of like our Common, like the rapper. Yeah, he's like our Common, man.
Very good.
He's really good. He's a spoken word guy, but he also, it's kind of like rap but spoken word kind of deal. But it's really good. I think it was for one of the trilogies we did. He did a trilogy of these things called Three Witches, which was really interesting.
That was really good.
Like each one was different, and then when I got to the third one, it was like the conclusion of it, so to speak. You know,
Funny
so-
thing is that when I edit these episodes, because by the way, for those who are not aware, I'm the one who actually edit these episodes, and they do take a long time to edit. So
he's the one we call the mastermind behind it all.
Yeah.
He's like our Wizard of Oz.
because I got a custom built computer with some programs that I put together, which I use more than just that for editing, but I also play computer games, things like that. But yeah, whenever every time when I'm editing some of these episodes, I do listen back to some of the Yella's segments, and pretty dope stuff.
Yeah, man. I remember the first time I heard him, and I actually asked him before. I said, are these things that you've already written down and you just come up? He's like, no. Most of the time, I'm just like, I grab the phone or grab whatever, and he just goes off the cuff. He just says what it is, and I said, that's what's great. I said, that's what we want. We want something that's just like off the cuff. Something that, it's not just, it's not something that's just written down. Just whatever comes to his head, like free flow jazz is what it was actually what we, with this podcast is kind of what we do a lot of times is free flow jazz. We have an idea and then
Just roll with it.
We just roll with it, So anyway, so we're going to go ahead and take our first break, head it over to Yella's Corner, and Yella, take it over, bro.
A hero is born, a hero is slain. Such is the cycle of life. A dragon helps siege the castle. The lion hunts villagers. Desert scorpions strike with deadly poison. Trees are chopped down by the axes. Such is the cycle of life. The black widow lures her prey with great gall. She catches them with the webs of deceit. The die has been cast. It's time to snip the silver cord. When it has you, who can escape the mighty jaws of a crocodile? Luke Skywalker will indeed slay his villain. Alas, a true hero. There is indeed no escape for the dark side. All will fall at the hands of his mighty lightsaber. Such is the cycle of life.
So, I had mentioned in the beginning that we were going to do a somewhat of a tribute, or try to do a tribute to the late great Chris Cornell. It really did have an effect on me. Like that, there's been times in the past couple, like about 2 or 3 weeks now that I can't really listen to his music because I start shedding tears and stuff. A lot of people, when I tell them that, they're like, what's your problem? I don't get it. And it's like, well, I've been listening to his music since I was 13, and it's like that cliche, like, your music got me through tough times. It was like, well, it's true. I mean, his music was always there in some way, shape, or form, whether good times, bad times, thinking times, or whatever. His music was always there. He was that great of a person, as a singer, as an artist, as a frontman, whatever. I mean, I think their band was the best to come out of Seattle. They were actually the first band to actually sign to a major label. It wasn't Kurt Cobain and Nirvana. It went Soundgarden, and then it went to Alice in Chains. And I guess because their music was more on the lines of like kind of like hard rock, heavy metal. And of course you listen to it now, and of course Soundgarden is always considered like if Led Zeppelin and Black Sabbath had a kid, they always compare those two and sprinkle on a little bit of the Beatles on it. That's what you get when you listen to Soundgarden. And I guess, it just didn't take off. And then, Kurt released his, Granioso. I mean, Smells Like Teen Spirit. It was a really dumb name, but it was the song that changed it all. That video, that song, went everywhere. And then everybody was like, oh, Soundgarden. Oh, here you go. And that was when the train started rolling. That was when they started grabbing them dudes,
right.
Soundgarden was on fucking, True Romance soundtrack. They were all over MTV, Outshine, Jesus Christ, Jesus Christ Pose, all that stuff. The Bad Motorfinger era was grunge, that was, in a lot of people's eyes, there's a lot of, stuff of them playing live. Chris is jumping around, had long hair, shirtless, chest out, saying, fucking embracing the people. At times he did look like Jesus, like with his hair, and especially when he started growing the goatee and stuff. He did kind of become like an alternative, rocker Jesus type of thing. Mm-hmm. It had probably one of the most distinctive voices out there.
Whoa. Absolutely.
I mean, that guy.
Fantastic voice.
I remember hearing Henry Rollins say that, like, Chris could peel the paint off of walls with his voice. And that was how good he was. And that's another thing. When I hear a song like Blind Dogs Live, and you hear just the way the guitar is going, and you hear the way he knows how to sing. He knows what is right for that flow. And it gets you, man. And then it start crying again because the fucker's gone. And it's sad, man. And that's the reality of things. And that's the whole thing, like I was saying before, like mortality. 1 minute you're here, next you're gone. And it's true. You don't know when your time is on, when your time is not. And I guess it was his time to go.
It's day and time. It's very, very quick for people to make rash decisions, and so busy.
We really do live in a chaotic time.
Yeah.
I mean, my dad, we don't argue about it, but he tells me before, it's like, hey, you ever gonna give me any kind of grandkids? And I'm like, Dad, you have 12 grandkids already, and you have 5 or 6 great grandkids. Does it really matter if I give you one? I mean, yeah, I'd love to give you one, but I'm not. I have morals, and I have my own code. And if I don't follow my own code, I mean, hell, then I'm cheating myself. And I might as well just call it a day. Right. When you start, doing that about yourself, it's all set in motion. I'm supposed to be like, you're supposed to be like this, just like him. Unfortunately, I don't know, they say, the toxicology came back. They said, he had about 4 or 5 different things that was in him. They said that what he took, shouldn't have killed him. The medicine, what he took, wouldn't have killed him. wouldn't drive him to commit suicide. Well, you don't fucking know. You don't know where his fucking head's at that time, man.
That's for sure.
I mean, that's the thing about people. I mean, you think one thing, you think one person this way, and then all of a sudden, something happens, like they go crazy, and you're like, I never would imagine. Like, no.
People's tolerance are different to certain things. What might push somebody over the edge, another person might be able to tolerate it for a longer period, but
there's something that just snaps, man. I mean, you're just like, I don't know what it would be. I mean, I'm not, like, we've all had those moments where, there's like a breaking point where, like, I call it the Incredible Hulk comes out. It's literally, like when you watch the Incredible Hulk, that's the way it is. Like when he gets that fucking enraged, when he turns into the Green Machine, bolt. And that's the way it is in real life. You become somebody, you're like, get the fuck out of the way. I'm going to throw shit. I'm going to hurt people, even though I don't want to. But, I'm full with adrenaline and I'm fucking pissed off. And you're in the way. Sorry. But there's, you control that shit the best you can. I mean, like I said, I always think about things like 6 moves ahead, like chess. I can lose my cool, and then I won't have a job. I'll be in like jail or whatever, and I don't really want to go to jail, and I don't want to lose my job, so I'm going to bite my tongue, maybe go into the cooler, or go wherever, and just scream and lose your shit, and work stuff out,
right?
So to speak. But I mean, getting back on topic, I don't know why we're talking about that stuff, but going back to Cornell, I mean, let's talk about Soundgarden a little bit. It started in '84. Chris actually met Kim in, I think it was '82. So I mean, you do the math. '82 to 2017. That's how long they've been friends. I'm sure. It's like most bands. You bump heads on things. You don't really, you don't see eye to eye on a lot of things. But that's what also makes the band great.
I had a random thought. When I used to go to Talladega every year in Tent City, we had a weekend that was all themed around the song Spoon Man, which was a pretty good time. It was actually pretty funny at the time, but we played Spoon Man probably 150 times that weekend. It was a lot.
Yeah.
But great times.
Yeah, Spoon Man is a real person.
He evolved.
He's I guess a performing, like a street performer or something like that. I mean, he was in the Spoon Man video. Chris even said like he wrote Spoon Man as like a luxury. He didn't write it like, I'm gonna write this as a song, for a hit. It was one of those things where he wrote it for the pleasure and just put it away. He had no intention on Soundgarden or him actually recording it other than maybe like writing the song and demoing it.
Right.
And then of course, fuck, it's all over the radio. But I mean, like I said, their career really came from more of a almost like a punk rock / metal cross fusion, really. That's what more or less like what grunge was. I mean, it was the sense of like the term like grunge, like that shit that's in your nail or in your toe jam or whatever. Like the dirt and shit. Most of those guys at the very beginning, they were dirty. I mean, hell, they probably right before the show they were pumping your gas at the local 7-Eleven, or what have you, or being a log cutter or something of that nature. And then they play a show. I mean, it was for me, grunge was as in like what the '80s was. And I know you and we've talked about the hair metal and stuff, and I don't hate the hair metal. I mean, there is definitely some bands that I liked that and some bands I thought were cornball, but I could see where grunge was coming from. It was just coming from more of a serious standpoint, more of a singer-songwriter kind of thing. Like, it was definitely going back. It was picking up the torch that Neil, I want to say Neil dropped, but definitely, they were going along the same line that Neil Young was doing for years. It was being more about, about the moment and, about the words and music and just being like a singer-songwriter and just, not being so glitz and glamour. Oh, we need, fucking like 3 dancers over here, or we need like this big ass giant stage, and we need these like,
right, all the add-ons
and like this. What do you call it? The Spinal Tap syndrome. Like all that shit that happened in Spinal Tap. I don't know how many of them cats from the 80s have said before. It was like, I watched Spinal Tap and I cringe. Dee Snider said himself that he went to some place somewhere. They had a theater, and then they also had like a ballroom, and he heard all the people, and he went right into where the ballroom was to go sing, and nobody was there, and he was freaking out because he heard the people, and he was like, I'm completely sober, but I hear the people, and finally somebody grabbed him and ground him, and he went down. It's like the total Spinal Tap thing. But speaking of Spinal Tap, Soundgarden actually covered Big Bottom. They would incorporate Big Bottom and Eureka My Eye, which was Cheech and Chong. They would play those live, and that was another thing that was kind of showing you where they were coming from as a band, so to speak. Like what turned them on. What inspired them. Cheech and Chong, Spinal Tap. Stuff of that nature that they had. They also had sense of humor. The band did actually go through a couple of lineup changes before it was cemented with the lineup that was together from probably like 91 until even the passing of him into that, a couple weeks ago. This guy that was a hero, he was the original bass player. He was more of a punk rock guy. He didn't really care for Soundgarden getting to be big. And when they started to get a little attention and start making videos and stuff like that, he's like, yeah, I'm gonna jump ship. And then there was a cat who played bass with them who actually was in Nirvana, and he was with them for a little bit until they got Ben Shepherd. Now Ben Shepherd was kind of like the George Harrison of the band. Like there's a song called Head Down on I forgot what the instrumental called. There's an instrumental piece right before like Suicide, Half-Life I think it's called, and it reminds me of like George Harrison. Like there's a sitar being played. There's like this Indian type of feel going on with it. Like a little mid-eastern type of feel, like music going on. Right. And you're looking like, oh man, who came up with this? Like, oh, Ben Shepherd. And it's like, wow. I mean, that starts opening your eyes more about the band. Like, oh, this guy is a force to be reckoned with. He's more. There's something more than just Chris Cornell. And then of course, you had like Matt Cameron, who originally played with Skinyard. That was one of the godfathers of grunge. Jack Iantino, who would go on to work for Sub Pop as their main producer. He produced the first Nirvana album. He produced a couple of Melvin's albums. More recently, I think he worked with the stoner band Nebula, which comes from California. Who the guitar player and drummer were part of another band called Fu Manchu, which is a really good stoner desert rock type of thing. If you like rock and roll like that, like the 70s style, that's more or less what stoner rock is. Mm-hmm. It's like 70s style rock and roll. But he wound up leaving Skinyard and just joined Soundgarden. He was a very heavy thumper. His drumming was amazing and still is amazing. The guy's in his mid-50s and fucking plays like a beast. I say that a lot about drummers, but the ones I do talk about and I say beast, it's true. I mean, he does fucking play like a machine. He's all over the fucking place. And he also, backing vocals as well. And then just rounded out with Kim Thale, the guitar player, who, like I said, they met in 82, so, 82 to 2017, that's a long fucking time to be friends. Many roads rolled down together. Brought a lot of butt heads with song ideas. His guitar playing, he always played in drop D, which was something that Buzz from the Melvins actually showed him. And once he showed him that, like, his outlook on guitar playing was forever changed. That's the reason why the band was always heavy as fuck. You know, you listen to some of their stuff and like, man, that guy's fucking, you know, amazing. We used, you know, I never would pronounce his last name because, you know, if you didn't hear it from somebody, if you didn't hear him say it, I mean, it's just a far out name that, like, I wouldn't even try to pronounce and insult him or desecrate the name. I'm like, oh, that's Kim. Yeah, that's the guy. I wouldn't even say what his fucking name was. I'm like, yeah, I don't know. He's the Hindu god. Yeah, that guy fucking. He was amazing. And the band, I mean, it's heavy as fuck. And then you get to something like Bad Motorfinger when, you know, you had Motorfinger and then you had Nevermind come out the same year.
Right.
And I'd have to look to see, but I think Dirt came out in either 91 or 92. But you also have to think, too, that Blood Sugar Sex Magic came out in that same year, too. Mm-hmm. You know, there were some pretty hot records coming out in 91, man. I mean, you had Blood Sugar, you had Nevermind, you had Bad Motorfinger, you know. I mean, yeah, you did have Michael Jackson. I mean, no, that has nothing to do with what we're talking about. But, I mean, even though Michael was at number one, I mean, Nirvana, of all fucking people, kicked that fucker off thing.
Right.
You know? And that happened, and, you know, then it was like people were coming to them and, you know, being interviewed, being on Headbangers Ball. They were everywhere. All their albums were, you know, were being, you know, listened to by newer fans that had only heard them from the videos or for that one album. And then it's that time, which I've done a review on the Paramount show that they did in 90, I think it was in 92, I think. Which one night they filmed for a thing called Motorvision, and it was all the stuff from Bad Motorfinger, but it was at this place, the Paramount, and they would only record just those songs, like the one songs from the albums. And then come to find out years later, when they released the reissue, there was another show that they professionally recorded the entire show, you know, like this, you know, all digitally remastered. The show's coming out, and never knew anything about it. You know, never knew something like that even existed. You know, it's along the same lines of Jane's Addiction. When Jane's Addiction came out with their box set a couple of years ago, there was a Palladium show from 91 in there. And you're like, wow, man, fucking Jane's at their heyday. Mm-hmm. You know, you just listen to them just fucking ripping it up, dude. I mean, but, you know, and that was, even like with Pearl Jam at the time, that was like the freak out time. That was the time to get crazy. It was, you know, jumping around, getting into the pit, doing the fucking stage dive, the Jesus Christ pose, which the whole Jesus Christ pose was more or less like, you know, it was kind of like a thing for
a whole Seattle thing at that time.
I mean, it's like the Jesus Christ pose. All that really was just a form of crowd surfing, you know, and to be in those shows at those times, you know, the Seattle scene, the whole thing was explosive in the very beginning. I mean, it literally was, you know, people jumping on stage and stage diving and, you know, just a state of ecstasy and craziness. And the only thing it was doing was just focusing on the music. It wasn't glorifying anything. There was no beer commercial, no fucking, no big dragons coming out or anything like that. Nothing, not that that's wrong, but it was more of a realistic thing. It was coming from ordinary people, and it wasn't just coming from, you know, Jimmy Page, you know, like great worldly guitar that fucking nobody could ever play like. But, I mean, and then you get to the next album, Super Unknown. That was even more of a success. That was when you started getting into, like, the bigger numbers. They're going from playing the amphitheaters or playing the little halls and to playing the fucking arenas, man. I mean,
arena band.
You know, when your song is on the fucking radio, you know, out of an hour, at least 1 or 2 times on 1 or 2 stations. I mean, that's a lot. And going on MTV and seeing like Black Hole Sun, and then like 2 hours later it's on rotation, or another video of theirs on rotation, and people just don't understand sometimes. At least like the younger generation really, I don't think understands like how powerful MTV was. Like once upon a time, MTV actually played music videos. They really gave a shit. It wasn't a thing that, you know, you had reality TV on. You know, no game shows, no fucking Real World. It was music videos, and it was music. That's the whole fucking concept behind MTV. Music, television.
24 hours, 7 days a week.
And
you got it.
I mean, I posted something the other week. It was from the UK, but it was from the MTV UK. And it was in '97 when I think when Soundgarden was touring with Down the Upside. They went in the studio and they played like about 4 or 5 songs, and it was some of the best fucking live material I've ever heard. You know, especially like that was super unknown Down the Upside era. So it was more or less like the clean cut, like goatee, short hair, more like about the music and being professional. You know, you definitely could tell like they hit the golden goose, and they weren't really thrashy. Like we have mentioned before, they weren't hungry anymore. They had already made their fucking money. It was more or less like, you know, this is what we're selling, like it or don't like it. But, you know, if you don't like it, there's going to be 100,000 other people who do like it. So, but it still was great, and it was on MTV. And you're thinking, you're like, wow, MTV would never play anything like this to the day. I mean, I saw it, was it last year? Even this year, the MTV Movie Awards was on 7 fucking networks. 7 networks. 104 was only on 1 fucking network. MTV's fucking crazy. 7 fucking networks. I'm like, your shit sucks. Your shit sucks.
Yeah.
And only rock people they ever get to play there is mostly Foo Fighters. I mean, I don't consider Linkin Park fucking rock, even though the rest of the world consider them something. I think they fucking suck. But yeah. So, but what I'm getting at was, you know, MTV back in those days, it was more important. Like the music was a lot more important than it is today. You know, there is no outlet really for a band to play. I mean, like besides like, you know, late night, you know, Jimmy Kimmel or Jimmy Fallon. Conan O'Brien still has Jack White come on there, and he has other people play on the show as well. But there's like no other, like, okay, here's an hour-long show. You guys go out there and play like 5 songs. You know, I know PBS had the Artist In for a while, and they had the
Austin City
Limits
was a great series, but back in the 70s, you had Don Kirshner's rock concert, and that was like every Friday.
Mm-hmm.
That was something you look forward to. You didn't have the taping machines. I mean, you had to watch it live. You didn't have.
Now going back to like, you know, something like Super Unknown. I mean, that album alone was, you know, if Bad Motorfinger was the album that broke them to the mainstream, then Super Unknown was their swan song. It was kind of like their Zeppelin or their Sgt. Pepper's. It was that album that set them apart from the other grunge bands. You know, I mean, there was, I'd say, about 4 or 5 grunge bands that made somewhat of success, made huge success or made mild success. But with all those bands, there's other bands that didn't make it. You know, there was a movie called Hype where they topped those bands. And no offense to those bands, but there's a reason why your band didn't make it. You know, I mean, when you look at your band, you're jumping around like an idiot, or you sound like a munchkin, and you're like, why didn't I make it? And why did Soundgarden make it? Well, I mean, come on, let's read between the fucking lines here. Let's be realistic here, okay? But I remember the first time I played Black Hole Sun for my dad, and I was like, listen to this and tell me what you think. And he listened to it, and he got done. First thing he said was, he was like, this reminds me of the Beatles. And I said, the Beatles? I said, okay, kind of weird. And then, like, after that, from that moment on, a lot of people would always compare him to the Beatles. They'd always be like, oh, there's like this Beatle-esque. And then when you listen, what I'm getting at is when you listen to Super Unknown, it's like listening to the Beatles. There's rock songs on there, there's acoustic songs on there. Like I said, there's the two songs that Ben Shepherd did were fucking so different than anything that Soundgarden had ever done. I mean, it was like a total 360 from what their sound was to what their sound is. It's, picking up different shit. There was always the hard-hitting songs, but then you had the Spoon Man, you had Black Hole Sun, Fell on Black Days, all the big hits, and yeah, it brought you in, but there was all those other songs like Suicide, which is another song that you probably, somebody will eventually say that, oh, that's that song, and it's like, no, that song, just like Suicide Solution by Ozzy, is about drinking yourself to death. And how do I know that? Because that's what Chris said. It wasn't about fucking killing yourself because he wrote that shit when he was, flying high and doing his own thing. He wasn't even thinking about fucking killing himself. And it's just the way it is. I mean, and in media, a lot of times blow that shit out of proportion. Pull that shit out of the water.
Of course they do.
It's like, oh, this guy, and it's like with wrestling. I mean, we of all things, I mean, like when what's his name? When the Warrior died, Diamond Dallas Page went on, I think it was like CNN or something like that, and he was being interviewed with this lady, and the first thing she was asking was about the steroids. Like, oh, it was steroids, wasn't it steroids? You could tell it was steroids, and he was like, and he more or less just like walked off the fucking show. I mean, she was trying to say that, and the Warrior prior to that date hadn't done steroids in probably 10, 12 years. So, that's the media always fucking, blowing shit out of proportion. It's like, bitch, you don't know the whole fucking story. You're sitting there talking shit about this man. You never met him before. He has a wife. He has two daughters. Why the fuck are you gonna blast this fucking guy's name? Oh, just because he's, really well built, and he was and he was an icon, and he was a wrestler, and just because he winds up dying of a heart attack, you automatically assume it's this and it's that. Well,
it's probably just because it's trying to go back to the steroid scandal back in the days, especially when Vince McMahon was in court, several times because of Hulk Hogan, ratting him out. Yeah. So,
well, I mean, it's the same thing. It is. I mean, Chris had supposedly he had 4 or 5 different things in his system, and people, the doctors say, oh, well, this couldn't have killed him. This wouldn't have driven him to suicide. When Dr. Drew actually even said, like, this one particular drug that he was on, he should have never have been on. He should have never done it, never even been prescribed it or anything like that. And if Dr. Drew's telling you that, a fucking well-renowned doctor's telling you that, you should fucking listen to him. I mean, yeah, true, he's a Hollywood doctor or whatever you want to call him.
Yeah.
Professionally, some sort of a celebrity of some sorts. But, whatever. I mean, I personally think...
That's what he deals in, so, I mean...
Yeah. And, I mean, when I go back to it again, you don't know what was going through his mind at that time. I mean, you don't. I mean, we will never know. We will never know what happened in those last moments, but... I mean, we could speculate, we can...
He didn't leave a note?
No, as far as I know, he didn't leave a note. He didn't do anything like that, man. No. And then, then when you go back to Down on the Upside, which was the final Soundgarden album, that was the album where it was over. The band was toast. As Steve Perry would say about his run and journey at that particular moment, they were toast. And, they were... fighting with each other all the time. They made this album, and it was more or less like, we're going to, support it, we're going to tour behind it, but when it's over, I think we're over. That's pretty much what happened. And when that happened, I mean, that was fucking huge, man. That was like, Beatles breaking up, or that was like Zeppelin breaking up, or a fucking huge band just quits right at the top of the game, kind of like what the Police did. Or what we were talking about Journey. I mean, Journey, they quit on top too. There was no sayonara or anything like that. But at least Soundgarden did go out and they did, live up to their, they're pre, like doing TV shows and doing stuff like that and doing a tour, and then just ending it instead of like, no, fuck that, we're not doing that.
Well, they were still significant.
Oh yeah.
I mean, still a lot of people cared about them. So.
Well, yeah, I mean, and even for years later, I mean, there was always talks about it, and of course, for the next 10 years, Chris would always get, those questions like, hey, what happened? Like, when's the Garden getting back together? But he did actually, before we finish, or before I finish what I was originally saying, before I finish this segment, I wanted to bring up the Temple of the Dog project that he did for his friend Andrew Wood from Mother Love Bone. Now, Mother Love Bone is significant because the bass player and the rhythm guitar player would go on to form Pearl Jam. And it was an interesting thing that he did. He asked the members if they wanted to play on the album. He wrote these songs, and he did this tribute album to his friend, who was actually his roommate at one particular time. They would always write songs, and they would try to write a song a day. And he was like, you write a song? No, did you write a song? Yeah, here's my song, kind of deal.
Right.
It was just their kind of thing. And when he died, it really, really messed Chris up. Like, he really was, tore up by it. And which made me think about this situation. It was like, I mean, you went through this, you over your lifetime, I mean, you've lived the life of 10 men, but yet you've seen so much death in your life from your friends that have been here and gone. Why the fuck would you do that to yourself? I mean, like, what? I mean, that's what always will come down to, was that mystery. What was in his fucking head? Why did he do that?
What could have happened at that time?
Yeah, what could happen? But of course, Temple of the Dog actually became a pretty successful thing as well. The album went on to be number one. The song "Hunger Strike," which was the very first appearance, or the very first thing that he would actually record before he would go in the studio with Pearl Jam to record the 10 album. And that was another thing, that when Eddie first came up to Seattle, the Pearl Jam guys and the Soundgarden guys were like best friends. They hung out together. Eddie and Chris became more than best friends. It breaks my... It makes me sad when, he didn't make the funeral for reasons that he was starting his European tour, I think, and there was some song that him and Chris used to do, and I think halfway through it, he actually had to stop because he started bawling, or he started crying or something like that. So, but that's just goes to show you too. I mean, 91 to 2000, that friendship right there. They were friends, even when the bands were in the top, well, on the charts or in the spotlight or whatever. They always were friends. They'd always would call each other, brothers, man, brothers. And then he would later go on to, he would release his very first solo record, which I think was Euphoria Morning or Morning Euphoria, which that was okay. I mean, it was all right. I mean, for us Soundgarden fans, we were still interested in that voice and still interested in hearing what he was going to be doing, what was going to be next. And the solo thing didn't really last all that long, because then he wound up, joining forces with the dudes from Rage Against the Machine, who their singer decided to step out and go solo, which he would never release a solo album. He did release a song, I think it was in 2004, and that was the stint of his solo career, I guess, so far.
That was about it.
He was in a band called something about a lion, and it was actually pretty good. It was really good. I was really surprised. But then they would join forces with Audioslave, and at first the band was going to be called Civilian. And there was so much hype around this band. It was insane how much hype was around this band. It was being compared to Zeppelin. It was Morello is like Page, and Cornell is like Plan. It's gonna be really fucking good, and of course you're buying into the hype. And you're thinking like, oh, I'm fans of both these bands. Both these bands I'm fucking huge fans of, and it's like, okay, I'm in. I'm 100% in. And we're gonna actually pick that up after this segment. So it was kind of like probably mid 2000, almost late 2000, early 2001 when we started getting rumblings for the Civilian band, which was later known as Audio Slave, and that was the first name the group went behind. That was Chris Cornell and the cats from Audio Slave. Not Audio Slave, but Rage Against the Machine. I'm sorry about that. And, they wound up recording an album, the very first one, the self-titled one, which was an amazing album for its time. You got to think about where music was in 2002. It wasn't really much going on at that time. I mean, you had Chili Peppers still putting out their stuff, and, you didn't really have anything. That was a little bit before the whole garage revival with the Stripes and the Strokes came about. But, this album was kind of like that beat, that said, hey, rock's still alive. Rock music's still very much alive and very much, relevant as it is, as it always is. And, of course, they went on tour. There was, the first thing they said, well, we're never going to play Soundgarden songs. We're never going to play, Rage songs or anything like that. We're just going to stick strictly to our stuff, and if we cover stuff, it's going to be other people's stuff. I was really bummed out, though, when I first heard it, because I thought it was going to be a lot thicker. I come from Soundgarden, where Chris plays rhythm guitar, and in this one, he didn't play guitar. He just more or less sang. Like, he picked up the acoustic guitar on I Am the Highway and stuff like that, but he just was a singer. He didn't play anything in Audio Slave. And then the band progressed. The second album came out. Be Yourself was a pretty successful song. It was probably, I think, number one for a week or two. So that garnered them some more success, and they went out on another tour and, kicked ass and took names, and they came out with Revelations, which was their third album. And by that time, that's when things started getting a little bad because the guys from Rage were getting pissed off because he wasn't sharing the royalties of the writings. You know, it wasn't like the Doors. You know, it wasn't like, hey, let's all share the writing credit. Let's just no. I want to take the writing credit. You know, I wrote the song. It's my song. So, you know, and some people can do that. Pete Townsend's one of them. Every single thing. I mean, you know, $30,000 I think it was for any of the CSI shows, and all his songs were on the CSI, so he was making bank. You know, so why not? And that did have a rift between the almost like two camps at that time, the Chris and the Rage guys. You know, so eventually he just wound up, you know, no more band. You know, I remember that when that announcement happened, it was kind of a you know, blow, but it wasn't as bad as like when Soundgarden broke up. You know, I was like, oh well. But there was talks at that time of, you know, Rage was getting, you know, that was the thing. You know, Rage was getting back together. They did a little mini tour, and that ended. You know, it was like, y'all gonna come out with new music? No, we're not gonna do that. You know, we're just gonna play sporadic shows whenever we want to, and you know, whenever Rage needs to get back together for whatever reason, we'll play shows. If not, you know, fuck it, whatever. So when he left that, I remember I told you that. I saw the Howard Stern interview that he did when, like, right after he left Audioslave, and this next solo album he did, and you know, we both agree that Howard is an amazing interviewer. He knows what the people want to hear.
Yeah.
You know, because I mean, he's asking from a fan standpoint.
Questions. Absolutely.
And there's times where, you know, he's like, it's a jokingly when he's like, so the other guys in Soundgarden fucking hate you because you're making all that money, and you know, is that the reason why the band broke up? And he's like, no, that's
what he wants. I mean,
that's not really
the truth, though.
Yeah, he's like, no, that's not what happened. You know, and of course, Chris is very humble. Mm-hmm. You know, at least he always seems like he was humble, and he was like, no, that's not the case at all. You know, it's, you know, we just, you know, you get tired of somebody, and you know, hey, it's like. It's kind of like a marriage. You know, eventually you can last, or you can not last.
You cut your losses and you move on.
Fuck yeah. And so that's exactly what happened. And I'll you know, he even said, you know, a lot of most of the things was over, you know, songwriting. You know, because he's getting that extra money. Any song that becomes a hit, that guy gets a shit ton of money, man.
Oh,
I mean, a fuck ton of money. Especially if it's like a big success hit where it's being played like 12, 13 times from one radio station, and the other radio station down in Tampa is playing it 20 other times. You know? And that's just like cha-ching, 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 cha-ching. That's money in his pocket. And it's not the band's pocket. You know, it's kind of like, hey, we're a band of brothers. Why can't we just split it? Nah.
No, that's mine.
That's mine, man. And I admire the bands that do. I mean, it's like the Doors. You know, all their songs were credited to just the band. I mean, yeah, Krieger, he wrote a lot. I mean, he wrote Light My Fire. You know, I mean, now it's a good thing, as in like a retirement thing. I mean, now these guys are 70, almost 80 years old, and they're still getting $1 million royalty checks, I'm sure, every year. You know, that's the thing. You know, the same thing goes for Soundgarden. I mean, there's albums out, you know, those albums that he did, or with Audioslave that he did, he's getting all those, you know, credits, and the other guys don't get shit. You know, so that does kind of wear on you, where you're like, hey, I want my cut too, kind of thing. You know, I mean, I did play the drums and shit on this, but you know, yeah, you did write the words, I guess.
Especially if a song goes on to sell a product.
Of course.
That's
Of course. So, you know, he would do 2 more solo albums, one of which was with Timberland. That bombed. I mean, that whole collaboration with Timberland was a joke. I remember in the rock community, people were like, what the fuck are you doing, Chris? Like, sell out. I mean, sell out from everyone. It's like, dude, he sold out the moment he signed to a major label back in the day. You know, said, I don't know what that fucking word means, but I mean, suck, yeah, it fucking blew. And then it was New Year's Day from 2009 going to 2010. Big news came about. Soundgarden getting back together. First time in 12 years. And it was fucking, it was a huge thing, especially on New Year's. I mean, on New Year's Day of all days, they announced that the band's getting back together. They did 2 shows. I don't know if they were ever recorded. I know one, like Beyond the Wheel, was freshly recorded from that first show, which went on the internet and people got to see. It was like, hey, the band's back together. They went in the studio the next 2 or 3 years would, between going on little mini tours and then working on an album, they would release King Animal. That was actually the last physical CD I ever purchased, and that was back in 2013. Anything else I've ever bought since then has been digital. It's been on iTunes. I have never bought a physical copy because certain things, it's like you're really only buying a book when it comes down to it. I mean, the music for itself, you go and you look at a box set, and you go to Best Buy or whatever, you spend $200-$300 when you go buy the box set with just the music for $20.
Right.
So that's how much it really is worth it. And you're only buying all the goodies is what it comes down to. You're not buying the music. If you want to buy the music, just go to iTunes. You're buying it just for all the memorable shit. And then in between all this stuff, they would start releasing, back catalogs. They came out with the first thing was a Telephasm, I think it was. And that was the very first thing, which was a 2-disc greatest hits that actually had Black Rain on it, which Brendan Smalls from Metalocalypse did the video for it.
That's right. He directed the video, and he had Antonio Canobio doing the artwork for it. And that's the same guy who does the artwork and the animation for the show of Metalocalypse.
Right.
And some of the album covers that Death Clock did.
And the song actually was recorded back in 1991. But it was just released, at that particular moment, some years later. And of course, there's people saying, "Oh, why did it take this long for the song to be, released? This and that. Why wasn't it released on the album? C'est la vie, whatever." And then they released the B-sides because the very first thing they ever released after they broke up was the A-sides, which was considered the greatest hits, and that was, all the famous songs and stuff. And then it was about 20 years that Kim had been saying that they were going to release the B-sides. It was like, hey, what about the B-sides? What about the B-sides? Well, he finally released the B-sides. And the B-sides, a good majority of them were covers. There was a few Beatle covers. There was a lot of demos and stuff that were on there. Stuff that, was on it. Soundtracks and shit like that. They had the Black Rain was on it as well because it fell on a soundtrack. The song they did for the very first Avengers movie, I think it was on the box set. And there was also BBC stuff that they recorded when they went over in 88, 89, and they played for John Peel and stuff. And some of that stuff I'd never even heard of or even seen the light of day, and it's being put out on this thing. So when it was first released, I was over the moon. I said, this is fucking what I'm talking about. This is shit that people want to hear. I love the hit songs, but I want to hear the fucking archives. I want to hear the vault. I want to hear the shit nobody hears from. There's a show that the Hype guys, the guys who directed the movie Hype, which was about, I mentioned earlier, it was about grunge. They actually went to Toronto, I think, and recorded a Soundgarden show. I think it was 94, 95. And supposedly they recorded the entire show. They had Search on My Good Eye Closed was featured in the film. Showed them, playing it live or whatever. And in the commentary, they're telling them, we went in and we recorded the entire show, and it's there, and blah, blah, blah. And right at the end of the thing, we have to give over everything to the band. And they would later on go and make the video for My Wave. So if you watch the My Wave video and you see the live stuff, just know that somewhere in the vault that show, there's a show from that, that show exists from that vault,
Yeah.
And like I said, I heard Search for My Good Eye Closed. I mean, the band was always fucking tight, it's praise them, dude. It's one of those things. And they kind of went into hibernation, from like 2013 to about like, probably they started talking about like earlier last year about maybe, getting back together to start recording the new album. And then, they started going on little mini tours. They did those 2 festivals here in Florida. One was in Jacksonville, I think one was in Tampa. I remember we were talking about going, but I was like it was like $100-something per day.
Right.
And I'm like, it's outside. I mean, the lineup was great when the night they were playing, but still like $100-something just to go see them. And I know they're the headlining band, but I just don't.
Too much.
It's just way too fucking much. And I was like, fuck, you think, hey, new album coming out, new tour. They're gonna fuck. And there was talks. I remember reading from Kim that they were gonna do a fucking full-fledged world tour. They were like the new album. They were gonna go bigger than they did with King Animal. But unfortunately that didn't happen. After that show in Detroit, he just left this world, I guess.
Sad day.
People are making a lot, and I've commented a couple times on the Soundgarden Facebook group that I'm in that a lot of people are making out to be such a thing like, oh, he hinted to things like that song, and I'm like, no, that's bullshit.
I heard about that.
That's bullshit because he's played that song at the end of Slaves and Bulldozers for years. It's not something new. Because I was like, I pointed out from the artist in, I said he's playing it right here, and then when I posted it in the fan thing, one guy commented, he's like, he fucking played it Sunday, the Sunday before the thing, and then the guy's like, oh, he played it, like I saw him like 3 times in the Nine Inch Nails tour. He played it every night like that. It's like, okay, well, fucking that's another one of the media trying to fucking say like, oh, he was yeah, fuck that shit. That it's. Fuck that. I don't want to believe that. And I can't believe that because I don't think it's true.
Well, that's the media for you. They want to misconstrue everything just to, benefit themselves.
Oh, yeah.
Just like with a lot of things happening in the world today.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
I mean, the times we live in nowadays, man, I mean, mortality is something that, I think about all the time. I mean, am I gonna live today? I had a friend... One could consider a friend. I had an acquaintance at work where she trained at my store and then she went to her store, and it was probably like a month later. I'm sitting there and I'm friends with her ex-husband on Facebook. We actually went to school together.
Wow. And
I remember he said something and he's like, oh, she something like she died in her sleep, and I'm like, what the I was like, what the fuck? I was like, she what? And I was even messaging him. I was like, "What's going? No." And he said it. He was like, "I guess she had a seizure while she was sleeping, or while she was, asleep, and fucking she died in her sleep. Yeah. I guess if you had seizures while you're asleep, I guess you can die.
Yeah,
that can happen.
I was at. Well, that's for another story. I don't want to go into that one because then we'll bring up Christianity, and that's another topic for another day. So anyway, but. The seizures, man. I didn't know that, and then come to find out that she was like working like extremely hard. She was working fucking 16-hour days. She was only getting 4 hours of sleep, and it's something that it's somebody who like we're sharing times right here. I'm talking to you, you're talking to me. We're having a moment here. If I go out and I get killed in a car accident. We've been friends for a long time, and that's gonna fuck you up. Yeah. That's gonna fuck this guy up. And same thing, vice versa with either one of you and me. That's gonna fuck me up. But
I've already had that happen to me once in my life.
Yeah,
so I don't want to go through it again.
And dude, but you just don't know, man. It's like my dad said, you don't know when it's your time.
Any more than the state we're in right now. Anything could happen at any time. There's nothing. There's no safe sanctuary anymore.
I've been watching this show called Shameless on. It's on Netflix, but it's on Showtime. And John Cusack's sister, she's in the show, and she plays in the beginning. Her character is she can't go outside. like she's afraid to go outside. There's just, like she hears people outside, she gets freaked out. She has to stay inside. I don't know what. There's a certain syndrome it's called, and whatever it's called, that's what she had in the show. And eventually she starts walking out, but then like a fucking plane crashes, I guess, right in front of her or something like that. And then she goes into her room and she spends like 2 episodes in her room, like she doesn't go anywhere. So I mean, I don't know what the fuck that is, but people have that kind of shit where, I mean, and like you said, these time of day and ages, I mean, fuck, I would get that. Like if I was in, if there was something like a situation that happened today at my store, at my restaurant, or something like that, that shit would mess me up. Like PSD or probably something like that.
PTSD?
PTSD, I'd be asking for any kind of counseling I could get, man. That's crazy, like what happened today here in Orlando.
I mean, it's nuts, man. I mean, it's not just, singers shooting them, off in themselves. It's just, random assholes, can't, he obviously he was already messed up in the head if he lost his job and he came back and started shooting people or whatever. Obviously there was already a mental state. So, but people don't know that. If you're not friends with somebody, there was a guy that used to work for us. It's his good friend. We called him Pine Nuts. That's another story, but we'll say that for another day. But we called him Pine Nuts. And when he first started working there, like people would just give this guy shit, like literally, like just treat him bad. And I remember my buddy told me, he's like, you better treat that guy right. He looks like the type of guy that come here with a fucking gun and like shoot this place up. And I said, oh fuck no. So after that, like I started talking. I was really nice to him. I was more like, hey, how you doing every day? And oh, that's good. And then we wound up talking. It was like 6 months later. He asked me. He said, I just got a question. Like, why did you start talking? And I said it was funny. I said, so and so told me that you look like the type of person that would kill somebody. You come in with a gun. And I said, I just wanted you to know that I was a good guy. And he's like, oh, so you only became nice to me just because you thought I was going to come up here? It's like, yeah, dude, you look postal.
Yeah, you gotta get on the inside.
But yeah, man, I want to end it with mortality. I mean, he's gone. He's not coming back. But in the bigger picture, he had a wife and kids and brothers and not just the fans. I mean, he had other people in the industry and everywhere else. And I mean, special fans that people have been to his shows from day one.
Oh, there'll be fans that'll probably take this maybe.
Oh yeah, it's definitely like a Kurt Cobain. It's like
affect a lot of people's lives. It already has.
Yeah, man. I mean, it's one of those things. Like I said, I mean, I can't listen to it just yet. I start listening to it, I start getting teary eyed, and then like when you listen to a song like "Say Hello to Heaven," you're like, oh fuck, no, I can't listen to that one either. And you hear a song like "Suicide," and you're thinking, oh no, like I said before, I'm really surprised that the media hasn't tried to fucking twist that song around. Like, oh man, maybe he knew something ahead of time. It's like, yeah, fucking don't drink. Don't be an alcoholic. But yeah, mortality, man. It's here 1 minute, and just like us, we're here 1 minute, we're gone the next. You don't know when it's your turn.
The older you get, the closer, and it seems like the more often you hear about it. And it's a shame, but that's part of life.
That's But on the flip side, we have we do a thing we like to call one final discussion, and I know you, and we've talked about Kiss before, and I just wanted to get your wrap around you, like I know your first show or one of your first shows was Kiss, wasn't it?
Yeah, Kiss would have been my third show. That would have been in, let's see, 1975. That was a big deal to me. I hadn't joined the Kiss Army yet, and that was before all the trash cans and that. But it was a really exciting. Ace was probably my hero. He played his guitar and he'd catch on fire. Gene Simmons was was blowing with the whatever he was using, kerosene or gas or whatever.
He caught his hair on fire one
I
time.
mean, multiple times he'd do that. I mean, not just once every 10 minutes or something.
Yeah.
But it
Spit
was
the blood.
it was the best show that I'd ever seen at that time, and it being probably one of the more exciting shows that I'd ever seen, I would have to put that in my top 5.
Well, when you put Kiss up there with like the very first band to ever do the extravagant stage presentation, you know, like with the bombs going off and the pyro.
They would do the things that were like together too, where they'd all start rocking together and stuff like that, and that it was
that
the
was
whole
cool.
stage show put together. A lot of bands during that era were pretty much just standing on the stage or hanging onto the speaker so they wouldn't fall over. But those were those times. But yeah, that was a very, very good time.
Now, you know, as a from a fan standpoint, I mean, like, did you buy into the whole mystique of the Kiss? Like, what I mean by that is like the cartoon characteristics that came along. You know, like I mean, looking back on it now, I mean, I could say this because I wasn't a kid then, but you know, some of it was kind of cornball. You know,
the thing that kept it sort of fresh was everybody didn't have a cell phone, and you'd see pictures of them out without their makeup on, but they'd always have something blocking, and it still kept a mystery to it, which I thought was pretty good. But yeah, some of the stuff was, you know, sort of cornball. I'll give you that, but they were influenced on a whole generation, man. I mean, like I say, Ace was my first hero.
yeah. Did you get the makeup and stuff, and did you
I
put
did
that
the
on?
makeup. I never did it at a concert, but I've seen tons of kids that have.
Oh, right.
Adults too. So,
But
yeah.
but at the time, like when they first came out with like the makeup, I mean, wasn't that kind of like, fuck these guys? You know, wasn't that kind of creepy? Like these guys are wearing makeup. Like what's
it was
that
a
all
little
about?
bit different, but you know, David Bowie at that time was
Ziggy.
wearing makeup.
Yeah, of
you know what I mean? Was Ziggy and that. So, you know, it was different for, you know, that type of music and stuff, but it caught on with the younger generation, and it took fire.
I mean, and let's not forget Kiss Alive, dude, the live album. That I remember I went years without listening to it, and then one day I just decided, like, you know, I'm gonna listen to it, and it was literally like, you know, like the light bulb goes off in your head. You're like, okay, now I understand. I get it. I get why this album was so innovative or great. I mean, all the songs were kick ass. I mean, there was no lame stuff. There was no 80s like
Even
Hearts on Fire or whatever.
even when Peter Criss did Beth, and you know, they sort of took that as a joke, and it ended up being a really, really big song.
I think he even got a Grammy
I think
nomination
he
for
did
that
get
too.
a nomination for that, but I mean, that's just, they could do no wrong at that time.
I remember the not merely the words. I just remember the you know, like the dun dun Beth, you know, like the piano and stuff. That's what stood out to me when I was a kid. I remember hearing that. I was like, didn't know who it was, and then like I'm watching this thing about Kiss, and I'm like, wait, that was Kiss? Like never. Nah. And then like I remember he would go out in concert and, you know, just be like, just out there like sitting on the corners, you know, singing that song.
Oh yeah.
You know, it's like,
Absolutely.
okay, well, whatever. But I mean, you know, and then of course they swore up and down they would never do a disco album, and then what they do? They do a disco
Everybody
album.
did disco back at that time. Unfortunately, not everybody, but theirs was "I Was Made for Loving You, Baby," and that's when I hopped off the Kiss bus.
Yeah. And you never got back on it, like even in the 80s or 90s?
Absolutely not.
Oh man, I remember listening to I remember Lick It Up, and I remember my dad we were listening to it, and you know, he's listening to the lyrics and stuff, and I remember he actually went over there to turn the tape off. He's like, what the fuck is this? What are you fucking listening to? And he's like, you know, listening to the lyrics, he's like, Lick It Up? What? You know, it's just like, you know, over his head, or maybe it really was pretty dirty for its time, you know. But I mean, the whole '80s thing was just bullshit. But now, when you got to like the revenge stuff, I thought that was better. That was like the best non-makeup album. You know, that was a lot. It was a lot more heavier. You know, that had Domino on it. I was made for loving, but the God Gave Rock and Roll to You was on that album. You know, which was actually recorded by Eric Carr, but you know, he wound up dying of brain cancer. So, I mean, it was on the Bill and Ted's Excellent Bogus Journey soundtrack, and then it went to the Revenge album. But yeah, he did play drums on that, and not Eric Singer. And that's another thing. I think it's a slap in the face to Peter Criss, that the fact that, like, you know, Eric Singer has been in the band for God knows how long, and he's been playing the Catman.
Oh, I know. Right?
You know, it's such a slap in the. And the same thing with Tommy Thayer. I mean, I don't know who the fuck Tommy Thayer is. You know, to me, he's just a substitute.
I wish they could put the differences aside, but it's about too late in the game to do that. So
I think so too. I think that reunion that happened back in what was that, 97, 98, I think that was probably the last time we'll ever see that happen ever.
I think so.
I don't think there'll ever be another one of those. But you know, I remember that when that actually happened, and you know, Tupac. I remember watching that. Tupac was sitting there, and they come out there, man, and I was like, wow. You know, it was the full makeup and everything, dude. And that was classic TV, man. That was a great meeting of the generations, or so to speak. You know, I mean, and only Tupac was a part of it, so you know. But you know, there comes a time, there's a place for, you know, to put things away, and I mean, I think Kiss is one of those bands that, like, you know, they're never going to make another great thing. Their time's coming.
They've ran their course, and they've served their purpose.
Now I will say,
for the most part, you can still listen to the older albums.
I will say, Gene Simmons' daughter is very beautiful.
Oh yeah,
funny guy.
His wife and daughter.
I follow her on Facebook all the time, man. She's gorgeous.
She's a sweetheart.
But well, we've come down that dusty trail we come to every episode. We're hit it until we can't quit it. So until we meet again, I am the Great Bodini, and we'll see you on the flip side. All right. So, I remember it was summer of '95, I think. My aunt and her son came down to stay from Jersey. They came down to, summer vacation or whatever. And this particular day, you remember, like, down on 192, right where that, I think Home Sweet Homes is. It used to be a Watermania, I think was what the water park was called.
Watermania.
Yeah, you remember Watermania? Okay.
Remember.
So, we decided to go to Watermania on this particular day. And, she told me, she's like, hey, watch your cousin Eddie. And, man, Eddie was, I was 13. He was probably like maybe 7 or 8, maybe at the time, something like that. And so he's childish, but, he knows right from wrong, and, he knows how to be annoying. So, we're sitting there, we decided to go up one of the slides, and we're up there, and, like, there's like fuck ton of people standing around, and all of a sudden he's just like, Johnny, yeah, I gotta go wee-wee. I said, okay, well, we're up here now, so you're gonna have to hold it. And all of a sudden, top of his line is, I gotta go wee-wee, I gotta go, like, fucking, like, all the way up to this slide, man. And there was like 2 or 3 flights of stairs we had to walk up. The entire time, he's screaming at the top of, I gotta go wee-wee, I gotta go wee. And I'm like, what the fuck? I'm like, shut up. And every time I get pissed off at the kid, he'd say it fucking louder. And I told him, I was like, when we get off this slide, I'm gonna beat your ass. I said, so think about that when you're going down the fucking slide. So he went down the slide first, and we went down, and I went looking for him. He ran to his mom, and she's like, did you threaten to beat my son's ass? Or did you threaten to whoop my son or something? Your son was up on there screaming on top of his lungs, I gotta go wee-wee, in front of, I don't know how many hundreds of people. So yeah, I'm gonna beat his ass. And she goes, he just does that just to get aroused out of you. I'm like, fuck that. So I told her that too. I was like, fuck that. Fucking aroused. Yeah, you're getting aroused, you're gonna get your ass whooped. That's how people get their ass whooped in these day and ages. And she was one of those ones that really didn't. I mean, she whipped their ass when he was younger, but when he got to be a certain age, she didn't do that anymore.
She didn't discipline him.
Yeah, so it was like, fuck, man. So he was just one of those kids where, I mean, he would just do shit like that, man. I remember one time we went to, we were at Disney, we went on the Haunted Mansion. And, I mean, this kid's seen some fucking crazy shit. He's into some really horror, he liked horror movies at the time. We went on the Haunted Mansion, dude, and, like, that moment when, like, the room starts stretching and the lights turn out and you look up and there's somebody hanging. Dude, the kid freaks the fuck out. I mean, like, oh my god, like, just crying through the whole thing. And, like, he didn't stop crying the whole ride. I mean, like, I'm walking, we're going through the whole cemetery. And one of the guys actually broke character and said, hey, kid, it's just a ride. It's not real. And he's like, I was like, oh my god, shut the fuck up, yeah. Yeah, he's just like I said, the whole time. When we're back, we're going through everything, and I'm just like, oh my god. And then when you go to the hitchhiking ghost, like, I was like this, he's like, oh my god, there's a ghost in this. I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? Are you serious? So, cue a toilet flush.